Is their story, is the story of the parents being heard in all of this, either in the media or in the GMC or anywhere? Is it being listened to by doctors? No. Is it being heard in the media? Not to the extent that represents what's actually going on, no. And the reason is that these parents are dealing with a catastrophe. They're dealing with a child who can't go out of the house, won't go out of the house. Screaming, having tantrums, beating their head against the wall, has got terrible diarrhea, is 15 years old and in nappies. No, they don't get out of the house. They don't have time to talk to the media. Or it's a select handful of the parents who actually are so determined and are of a particular mindset that they can do that. The rest of them are just coping with the catastrophe that's their world. And some think it's the MMR, some don't think it's the MMR. The problem is that parents with children with autism are not being heard, and yet the numbers are going through the roof. And it's different. In the day in AIDS, it was a very different story. AIDS is a very interesting analogy of an epidemic disease that has occurred in our lifetimes. And AIDS started in a homosexual community in San Francisco and Los Angeles, and in the radically right politics of Reagan and Thatcher, it was a gay plague. It was your fault. It was an act of God. It was anything but a transmissible agent, a virus. And so what happened was, with AIDS, is that people were stigmatized. That's your problem, it's like leprosy. You get away from me, sort of thing. So people went underground. They continued their sexual practices. They didn't seek medical help. The virus spread like wildfire, and then 10 years later, when people acknowledge it's a virus, it's too late. It's too late. For thousands and thousands of people, it's too late. For 3/4 of sub-Saharan Africa, it's too late. There was no imperative to produce vaccines or drugs or anything during that time because it wasn't perceived to be our problem. And then suddenly it appeared in blood transfusion recipients and haemophiliacs and heterosexuals, and suddenly it was a major problem. And what happened was the AIDS activists went and threw infected blood at officials. And the cameras came out, this is great, infected blood being thrown, take a picture of it, get it on the news. Suddenly politicians were embarrassed. And money started to flow and things changed. And so it was the pressure on the politicians and the change in perception that the media brought about because the activists did that really forced the pace of change. But these parents aren't like that. They're not AIDS activists. These are just ordinary folk trying to deal with a catastrophe in their lifetimes. They're not people who go out and throw infected blood. Maybe they should be. They're certainly getting angry enough now that something's going to happen, something's going to break. And you just get a sense of it at that hearing, at the beginning of the hearing. But something has to change because there are so many of these kids and so few resources, so little true care available for them. And you hear it again at this hearing, time and again. This is a psychological problem. It's a psychiatric, behavioral problem. Put them in a corner, sedate them, put them in a home, lock them up. No, it's not. It's a medical problem. It's a medical disease. It's treatable. It's understandable. You can investigate it. You can research it. And you can find out what's causing it if you want to. Nobody really wants to do that, apart from a few of us. So AIDS is an interesting parallel, and there was a kind of tipping point in AIDS, and it was around the time that people threw infected blood.